So we're continuing with our pop-up literary festival, and joining me now is the lovely Sue Purkis. Sue is a children's author. Hello, Sue.
Hi there.
So what got you into writing children's books? Are you just a big kid at heart yourself?
Oh, totally. What really started it off was, over 20 years ago now. I did a part-time course in creative writing generally at Bristol University. And I was just interested in writing. I'd always done a little bit. And I suppose I thought the thing I was most interested in was short stories. But one of the sort of segments of the course was on children's writing, and it was taught by a terrific children's author called Vivienne French, who's still writing now. And I don't know. I just loved it. I'd read children's books a lot because I used to teach English in a secondary school. So, I had been interested in children's books, but for some reason I hadn't really thought of writing them. But the thing with children's books is that you can write about pretty much anything. You can go into any world. You can write adventure. You can write humor. You can write fantasy. Whatever. And it was that kind of freedom that you can play. You can explore all sorts of things. And I just found I really loved it. So that was the start. And Viv was she was lovely, and she was very encouraging, and she encouraged me to think that I could get a book published, and which hadn't occurred to me before. That was something other people did. And that was how it began.
It sounds like a really interesting journey, and also to have gone from kind of that, being a teacher of it yourself. Was it a passion of yours as a kid, and that's why you went into teaching? Was it the writing that made you become a teacher?
Probably the reading more than the writing, I suppose. Initially, I'd always written a bit. In fact, I've got here. This is a book. It's from when I was a child. It's not from. I didn't do it at school. It was one I had at home, and I used to write stories. Look, can you see in there? And do pictures and things like that. Oh, there's one here of Queen Elizabeth, to do with Queen Elizabeth and all of that. Yeah. So I did used to write little bits, but I think it was probably more the reading. It was probably more the reading that got me wanting to do English at university, and thence to teaching. The writing was always there, but I never really imagined that I could be a writer. I mean, I hadn't known anybody who was a writer. I'd never met anybody, and they didn't. When I was a kid, there wasn't anything like Weston-super-Mare Literary Festival or any other literary festival. There was nothing like that, or nothing that I knew of. So it just wasn't something that I imagined I could be. But I suppose then when I was teaching, I was very interested in the library and the reading side of it. And I used to like doing the library lessons where you just give the kids a chance to read and talk to them about books that you liked and that they liked. And I always used to like that. So it all sort of things kind of fed into each other in a way, really, I suppose.
What was it like holding a published book that you had written for the first time? What was that feeling like?
Oh, it was fantastic. It was this one. It's called Spook School. It was a sort of a ghosty story, when I said, the first thing is they send you at a certain stage, they send you a proof of the cover, and that's when it really hits you. That's a real cover and that it's really going to happen. That was wonderful. And then when the books came, it was a lovely moment, and it always is a lovely moment when a book's published and you get the actual real book in your hands. One of many lovely moments, really.
And do you ever get written, I can just imagine how cool this would be, but do you ever get written any letters from kids where they kind of like go about the books?
You do sometimes, you do. Sometimes they're extremely unexpected. I mean, one, which actually wasn't from a child, it was to do with, I'm not doing this just to advertise them, honestly. This is a book called Emily's Surprising Voyage, and it's, as you might be able to tell from the cover, it's set on the SS Great Britain.
Yeah.
And it was about a voyage from Liverpool to Australia. And the two characters in the book are a boy and a girl called Emily and Tom. Anyway, quite some time after I'd written it, I got this email from a chap in Australia. And he said, I can't remember where it was that he said he lived, but he'd got hold of a book of one of the Emily book, and he'd realized that there was a shop in the little town near where he lived, an old store that was called, I don't know, the Thomas Drew Emporium or something. And my character is Thomas Drew. And the family, the descendants of the person who'd founded the shop, who they said they thought had possibly come over on the ship, they were still there. They were still there in the town. So he said, so they want to know, you know, how did you get to know about their ancestor? And I was sort of like, well, I didn't. I made it up. I made the name up, you know. But that was really extraordinary, you know. That's
really extraordinary.
A little bit spooky, really.
I wonder whether or not you've got, like, you know, some kind of supernatural talent for sort of talking to the dead, and somebody whispering this book through to you.
Yeah.
I mean, they do say, don't they? They talk about the fact that when you're writing a book, that sometimes the characters take on a life of their own and start writing the book for you.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever had that experience, but I hear that all the time. This kind of idea of sort of, you know, that they become. I mean, we all in I know you said psychiatry then, but we understand in Jung psychology that we have archetypes, or known as subpersonalities of the mind. So an inner critic, you know, I like to think that, you know, I have an inner alchemist or something really cool, rather than inner critic, inner controller, inner pleaser. And I would imagine that because characters in a book are very archetypal, that you're just channeling your archetypes, but maybe you're hitting on something supernatural here. And your next book about spooks will be a woman who gets taken over and is forced to write a book she doesn't want to write.
Well, I hesitate to bring it in here, but when I was born, I had 6 fingers on each hand. I had an extra finger on each hand. They were cut off sort of straight away, but I had those 6 fingers. And, you know, that is supposed to be a sign of a witch. I mean, I'm not saying anything. I'm not making any claims.
well, if you can, you know, come up with the lottery numbers or anything great like that, or
anything I can do, you know.
If I fall out with my neighbour, I'll give you a call. But
okay,
I think to try and practice kindness, you know. So not too much mysticism. So, are you working on a project at the moment? Are you constantly working on books? And how has lockdown affected your creativity?
Well, I wouldn't say it has, not in a bad way. A lot of people say it has. It's a lot of people who are busy, are much busier than I am most of the time, because I'm sort of more or less retired. I mean, not from writing, but I'm retired from paid work. So in a sense, I'm not doing anything all that different to what I used to do. But I know lots of writers who really want to be writing and think, oh, it would be an ideal time, but just haven't been able to. But no, it was a bit in between, really, because I'd finished the sort of first draft of something of a longish novel, actually just before the pandemic hit. And so for a few months, I had a break from doing anything long, but I run a writing group in Cheddar, and at the beginning of the pandemic, I thought, well, we're not going to stop. We'll go online. So initially, we did a sort of email thing, which was it was crazy, really. We'd write something, and then we had on Thursday morning, which was when we used to some of the people in the group they were a bit nervous about doing Zoom or whatever, so they didn't want to do that. So we did this email thing. So we sort of sat in front of our computers and we tried firing off emails at each other, you know, with comments, which was obviously disastrous because you don't get them in the right order and things. So you're answering, you know, 3 back or whatever. But it kind of worked, but not wonderfully. But now we're on Zoom and it works really well. And so what happens with that is I set a task each week and everybody writes something for that. And before we were online, I didn't usually used to do the task myself, but with all the extra time and with having sort of finished the longer thing that I was doing, I did that. I joined in and I loved it. It was great. It was really fun doing completely different things each week, you know. And yeah, so I did that. So I've been doing that.
And there's always has anyone in your group also published their work as well, or is this kind of like that you're because of your publishing background that you are an inspiration to them and that's why you're kind of like leading the group?
I set it up. Initially it was a class, so I was teaching a class. But this particular group, I mean, they've changed. Some people have gone and some people have come, but basically most of the group, I've been teaching them for about eight years, perhaps. Yeah, quite a while. And so it's not it's developed into, certainly during lockdown, into less of a class and more of a group. Because whereas when we were meeting together, there would be more, I would set them exercises to do and there would be more teaching, I suppose. Now we read what we've done and discuss them. Everybody makes comments and that takes up the time really. But yes, there are, in fact, 2 of them. One member of the group, she initially, whenever she did a short story, it was always sort of too crammed. It almost read like the plot of a book, not like a short story. There was too much happening in it. And I said to her, you know, you're just getting too much into it. This is almost like the plot of a novel. And she said, well, I just can't write short. I can't do it. So I said, well, why don't you have a go at actually writing a novel? You know, just start and see what happens. And so she did that, and it was quite fun, really. It's a sort of contemporary novel about a marriage in trouble and whatever. And she would read to us what she'd written in the first part of the week, and we all got a bit partisan, you know. I was on Clara's side, and most of the others were on Justin's side. And anyway, she wrote it, and she, over 2 or 3 years, she finished it, and last year she decided she was going to get it published. So she had it published with a firm called Silverwood Books in Bristol. It's called Keepers, and it's by Margaret Castle, and it's a good book. It's a really good read. So she's done that one. And then another member of the group, who's the oldest member of the group now, Heather, she's in her early 80s, and she had in fact she's the member who's been with the group for the longest. She's been with me she's a founder member, so she's been with me at least 10 years. And right at the beginning she said that what she really wanted to do was to write the story of her mother, who was from a very humble background, had a very hard life, and over the years Heather would write little episodes from her life and her mother's life. But when it came to lockdown last year, she couldn't join us online because she doesn't do the internet and everything. She word processes, but she doesn't have access. She doesn't want to have access to the internet or email or anything like that. So she couldn't really join us online. So she decided that it was a good opportunity to get on and actually do this, you know, writing her mother's story. And so she has, and I got it, you know, you can self-publish on Amazon. So we did that. I helped her with that. And in fact, it's really funny. Just this week, I did a blog post about it on a blog that I contribute to regularly. And I put a link to it on the local Facebook page. And it's just gone, whoof, you know, masses of because she's a well-known character in Cheddar. She used to work in one of the shops for many years, and then in Axbridge for many years. So lots of people know Heather, and loads of them have sent for the book, and it, you know, it was originally intended just to be for her family, but that's what she's done, and yeah, it's suddenly gone really, really popular. So yes, suddenly we're all being published one way or another.
That's amazing. And also, I presume, you know, if it's about her mother's life, then it's going to be locked in so much of history that even local people might remember, or remember shops or things that it bears reference to. Yeah. But also, you know, I mean, it's a funny thing to say that 80 doesn't feel that old now. My mother's verging on 80, so she turns 80 this year. And whereas you'd go, 80, woof, that's really old. Now, yeah, that's not very old. That's not very old.
No.
You know, but they just say, don't they, that you have a book in you, and that it really isn't ever too late to really tell your story.
No.
You know? And it probably keeps the synapses and neurons in the brain ticking over.
I think it does.
And keeps you smart.
Both of those. I mean, Margaret, the other one I mentioned before, I think she might be a year younger than Heather. So one of them's 81 and one of them's 82. Incredible. So for both of them, you know, the first time they've published a book. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It just isn't too late.
At least you can remember your nouns. It's what we call the senior moment, isn't it, when you can't remember the name of something. But I've been having them since I was about 15. So when you're writing something, at least you can look those things up and not do that. That's a really inspiring story. That's really amazing. So you're going to continue with the group, I presume, because it sounds super fun. It sounds really, really rewarding. And do you think you'll do any more teaching? Do you think that will be? Do you think you'll keep that as a group and maybe start teaching again, and maybe invite other people to classes?
I think what I might do is I've been sort of thinking about that. I think what I might do is I'll certainly keep them as a group, and you know, the odd one or two would be able to join, but I wouldn't want it to get too much bigger than it is now. But I think what I might do is look into doing sort of Saturday workshops so that people who are working can get to them. I have in the past done the odd evening workshop, but I didn't really like doing that. I mean, in the winter, I'm a bit lazy, you know, I don't like going out when it's dark. But also I found for the people who were coming to it, a lot of them were working, and you'd find people couldn't make it back because something had held them up, or, you know, they were very busy, they'd got families or whatever. But I thought, well, a Saturday workshop might be the way to go. So that's certainly a possibility. I may well do that.
Well, you may find that off the back of this interview that you become inundated with fans and people wanting to join you on that. So let me know if that happens. Absolutely lovely to speak to you, Sue, and well done for the work that you're doing. And I think that's kind of like a real community asset to have you there helping people write. So that's an amazing thing. Tell us about your books one more time and show us your books so that people can.
I was just if I can tell people about, this is the most recent one.
Yeah.
Which is called Jack Fortune and the Search for the Hidden Valley. And that's about flash. Yeah. And that's for, middle grade, what they call middle grade, which is very roughly sort of 8 to 12, that sort of age group. And it's another historical one. It's set at the end of the 18th century, but it's about a boy, quite a naughty boy, who ends up going off with his uncle, who is a plant hunter, who becomes a plant hunter, and they set off. They go off to the Himalayas in search of a particular plant, a blue rhododendron, and so it's about the adventures that they have. But it's also about that Jack he's very confident, and quite, as I said, he's quite naughty. He's very confident. He loves sort of, you know, he's being very active. And he thinks that when he gets out to the Himalayas, he's going to be really practically in charge of the expedition, because his uncle has always been, he's you know, well, he's in his 40s. He seems elderly at that time, not elderly to us, of course, a mere sprig of a thing. But anyway, he's been used to sort of spending his time pottering about in his house, in his sort of laboratory, and you know, he's not been an active person, but now for various reasons he's having to be. So Jack thinks his uncle doesn't have practical skills, and it's going to be up to him to, you know, look after his uncle, really. And in some ways it turns out to be like that, but in some ways it's not like that at all. There are lots of surprises for both of them when they get there. So it's an adventure story, but it's got quite a lot of other stuff going on with the characters. So it's a lot of fun, I think. And I have had a lot of kids that have written and reviewed and said that they, you know, they have really enjoyed it, which is just lovely. So that's the one. And then the other one that people might like to look for is Emily's Surprising Voyage, because it is set on the Great Britain, which of course, you know, we can go and see, which in fact I volunteer on actually in normal times. So it ties in very nicely with learning about Brunel and with going to see the ship, because it's also got these gorgeous pictures which are nothing to do with me, but let's see if I can find you one of the nicest ones, which are very accurate, which are very, oh, there's one. Look, that's the ship in the Bay of Biscay, sort of
being tossed around very rough seas.
Yeah.
I used to work on ships. I know the Bay of Biscay very well.
Oh, did you? Yeah, there's a whole chapter about that. And then this one I love, this spread. This is the ship at night time. So
yeah, lovely drawings.
Yeah, I was so pleased with the drawings. I thought it was really beautifully illustrated. A chap called James De La Rue who illustrated it.
Well, hopefully people watching this can find those, making excellent birthday presents, you know, and being able to get kids into books. Thank you, Sue. Real pleasure to speak to you, and keep up the good work.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.